good morning or good day or wherever and whatever you're up to. Happy new moon. Happy super new moon. Oh, let's make sure that stays. Okay. I think that'll work. Well, hopefully it doesn't fall. Happy super new moon. New moon in Aquarius. The second new moon of the year. And the new moon stepping into the lunar new year. So very much a powerful calibration. Let's see. There is Mercury and Pluto in Aquarius, also the moon in Aquarius. So that's an interesting little trifecta. They're very much like perfectly in line. It makes me think, I guess because the Super Bowl is a thing, when you know you have a clear shot, those planets, I think, are all very much in cahoots and acknowledging each other in that way. Conversely, Venus and Mars are in Capricorn, but they are all huddled. And I do think that the moon is very much a booster and power into the ways that we'll walk into the new year and the things in which will change. Whereas Venus and Mars, I think, in Capricorn are perhaps solidifying new structure, but also abandoning old structures. I found that to be a little bit frustrating myself. And the ways in which we write those stories for either of them, for either of those warriors, are they going to be the hero or the villain? And why? And why is it that we think those things? Because chances are the villain in your story is the hero in another, and chances are the hero you think you are is somebody else's villain. Much like the oppressed can also become the oppressor, not their, but the oppressor, which is actually kind of par for the course with everything that is, not everything, with certain things that are happening in the world as we speak, and certain countries reenacting, or certain places reenacting their own trouble. As there's other stuff going on. People are really high strung, and speaking of which, there is a slight opposition, but above the horizon line of Saturn, and so I think the Jupiter-Uranus squares and the squares that I talked a lot about in the last video is attention intensely, but with the possibility of alleviation if we enact a unified self, which is not that. Which is not that. Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's been that kind of day in general. So we're gonna pull some cards and see how we can not be that high strung, or at least handle it a little bit more eloquently, so that our bodies don't vibrate beyond belief, because that itself is an uncomfortable feeling and tends to boil over. So we're gonna pull some cards. And we're gonna breathe. I feel you, dude. Okay. Now if that seems well timed to you, or if you feel that kind of frustration, let's take a minute and we'll breathe. I know sometimes I not rush, but I've got a lot going on, and we can't always breathe for everyone. But we're gonna breathe for this one. So, much like we're hanging out, much like you're here with me, or I'm here with you, and we have cards in between us so that we can tap in to everything that's around us, we're gonna take some breaths together. And imagine that those cards are in between us, and make ourselves available for all the information that they will share with us. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. I hope that feels good. I feel like the air is very thick, and for as much as like I didn't feel like there wasn't movement, but there was still a lot of vibration. It's almost like if you were tight in a space and you were thrashing against it, there's like lack of movement, but there is sort of like a pulsation and a vibration. The ways in which, like, if you felt strangulated and you would like thrash against it, if you felt cornered and you pushed back, very much is what I'm feeling. It's not a comfortable feeling. However, there's a constant notion of being able to release that in a way that isn't so cataclysmic, and maybe in a way that isn't so chaotic. I think I already said that, but chaos there. Whatever spaces those are, that's again that Venus, Mars, and Capricorn. Those spaces are imaginary. Mental bondage is very much a thing, and the ways in which we constrict ourselves based on ideas or preconceived notions, without seeing the cliff or the bound or beyond the boundary. Even in a cliff vision, the sky is beyond that. There's much more beyond that, and in that way, like what part of ourselves needs to see beyond, whether that be beyond ourselves or beyond the lives that we think we're only capable of. That rigidity is very much that structure, or that feeling within that structure. I think there's very much that in the air too. There's a lot going on, and for people that think that it's just social media exposing us to it all, no. If we did not see or hear or know of anything that was going on in the world, some of us would still feel it. Some of us would still feel it and not be able to explain it. That's also, I think, why there's such a higher tick in psychotic breaks, and in the ways that people snap. Too much tension on a rubber band up here, and throughout your nervous system as well. Okay, we pull. Beautiful. Bottom of the deck is the Fool, a starting point, a ground zero, a blank slate, excitement for a new adventure. But it's also inverted. So have we hindered our ability to be excited about the unknown for sake of fear? This is very much the, oh, I really want to do this, but, oh, I can't wait to, but, kind of sentiment. And we ought not but ourselves. In fact, I heard something recently that was like, I guess in sales or business or whatever, rather than yes but, elevate with a yes and, because you sort of ride that wave and that frequency or whatever point that the other person is making in declination, riding that, meeting it, and then rising above. It's an add-on. I know that can't that also needs to be mediated and can't just be yes and, but why not yes and yourself instead of other people? I feel like I've always seen that as like, it's a yes and kind of night. I'm gonna say yes and to everybody else. Say yes and to yourself. I want to do this, and I'm capable of this, and I'm even the things that maybe you don't like. Sure, yeah, and also these other magnificent equal and opposite places you could be. I think depression is very much something that I remind myself that in is like, Yes, I'm, going through, maybe not right now, but in times, yes, I am going through, a particular feeling that I'm familiar with, a particular state of mind that I'm familiar with, whether it be depression, bipolar, or feeling particularly overstimulated. Um, and rather than put myself into and sort of negate those things as any kind of positive, um, I'll say yes, and in the sense that, like, yes, I'm very sad now, and intensely overwhelmed now, and what have you. Um, but not but yes, and I'm also capable of the same height and the same extremity, the same intensity in the opposite direction. So, yes, I'm very sad, and I'm also capable of incredible happiness. That's why those two things can feel so extreme. And sometimes that's just a little snap out of hope and, like, oh, yeah, you're right. I do have really, really great highs, and I'm very grateful for that. And that has to make room for the lows so that I can continue to uh, expand on that spectrum of emotions. And when you look at it that way, again, it's not a cliff that we're falling off, it's not a boundary, but it is a constant expansion, and a constant, like, paradigm expansion beyond the shift. And that is very much this Aquarius energy, and what will be left behind in Capricorn, and what it's going through now is, there's an incredible shift in energy, but we're also going to rise beyond that and expand beyond that. And in what ways? Again, with the squares and Jupiter and Uranus and what they're doing, um, is a challenge. It's a challenge to stay calm in this many situations that surround us. And I think oftentimes we feel like we have nothing to offer the world or friends when so many of them are going through something, and so much is going on. But this Knight of Pentacles inverted is very much that feeling, but also fails to recognize that the pentacle is still there and it is still a thing. It's just something that's maybe unseen or forgotten. And that is when we remember, yes, I'm depressed, and I'm still very capable of being able to show up for my friends and, share love and hope with them, because it's almost easier to see the world uh, in those ways. Almost like it's easier to be nicer to your friends and never let them talk bad about themselves than it is to treat yourself in that manner. And so this is an opportunity to remember that, or to remind yourself of that, and spend some time maybe recognizing how far you've come and how far you can go. That this is not a shift in another direction against that. This is a shift in an elevation. And I think a lot of us that maybe are going through it, this Nine of Wands is here, and I think that is also the reminder of the intensity that we feel also comes because of the power that we have. Again, the extreme sads, because we have extreme highs. The ways, the dichotomy in the ways that our emotions can ride is, as above, so below, equal heights to the sky and deep into the core of the earth, equal heights beyond, like, in your mind and beyond, and deep into your sense of self and your memory and your ancestry and Akashic records or what have you, if that's your jam. Which, don't knock it till you try it. It's very interesting to see versions of yourself alive in breathing in other ways, shapes, and forms. This also speaks to the tension in the air, that vibration in the air, the rage. That rage is like the best word for it. It's almost like a surge of electricity in just what's around us, that everybody is, feeling a lot, or holding in a lot, or lashing out a lot. Again, equal measures of extremes, however, exerted in a different direction. But similarly, dichotomous. The Chariot is also here, interesting, and brings me back to, like, again, don't knock it till you try it, with things like Akashic Records, or quite honestly, even if you don't believe in that, which is silly, there's a lot of psychological studies and psychology practices to sort of meditate on, you know, your younger self and your older self, or your current self that also wants to make maybe a different decision, or is sitting on a decision. It's very common to explore yourself emotionally in these ways, like medically and scientifically, but I absolutely also 100% attribute that, me myself, to time travel, and to being able to sort of play in those frequencies as well. I could actually probably tell you some stories about my own experiences in that. But so I think that that's a very notable place to look. Again, whether it's, you know, your immediate past of yourself that is afraid of whatever the future might hold, sit with them, talk with them, see what it is they're afraid of, and how you can console them in the same way that you would with a friend that is unsure right now. But also, you know, you can go farther back than that, and it's not just immediate lineage, it's not just blood lineage that you know. There's a lot of memory held within our bodies that is timeless and ageless, and I think those versions of ourselves may actually be very pertinent to the rhythm of the times, because they have seen some things and know some things that perhaps we are blinded to now. I also feel very called to say that this Chariot is also speaking about moving to moving with death, moving with those that have died recently, and a lot of us have lost a lot of people. Too many, quite honestly. I think I haven't seen a time like now where people younger than me, even everybody we know, knows somebody who's passed. Everybody we know knows who's somebody who suffered. And I don't think that's always been necessarily true across the board. But those people are still offering the bits, the pieces of their soul that were so necessary for the world, and are that much more important for this time. And rather than let go and move on, their lessons are something we can sort of take into ourselves. Their powers, their strengths are something we can take into ourselves and move forward with. I don't even think it's necessarily something that's like you do a ritual for. I think when you love somebody and they pass, much like a star goes supernova and creates new galaxies, pieces of their soul find souls that knew them and saw them, and not like literally see, but like saw them, and treasured aspects of them. And so, you know, the universe sort of gifts us these new constellations, or new stars and constellations, so that we can embrace them in life as well, is my theory. But also 100%, I think this Chariot very much wants us to lean into that, rather than be afraid of death, or feel like left behind by death, or feel lost because of death, or alone because of death. And that may even be, you know, for somebody that maybe didn't lose somebody. We are still living in a time where it is too normal, and a time when even if it wasn't somebody close to you, lots and lots and lots of people are suffering because of illness and sickness and its rampantness. That is also something that rests in the body in the same way, even if you don't feel connected to it. And I think that's also because our bodies and our minds aren't used to that kind of experience. So it is very new and overwhelming whether or not you're close to it. And again, I think if everything shut down, we would still feel it. We just wouldn't be able to explain it. And I think that's what leads to a lot of imbalance and overtake of mental illness and psychosis. I think there's a language of light in between this, in between the lines, sort of in between the particles or what have you, in between realities, in between the tangible, solid things that we see, that is rays of light that can shape the way that you perceive it, or the way that you interpret that information. I think that's something that we can play with, and I think that's something that very much has to do with your internal world, and the ways in which your eyes see within, that I think can paint a different picture, and string different lines on this instrument that we're playing to serenade ourselves through this world and through this life. Or to find the tune and the songs that we want to sing so we feel whole, or feel heard. As crazy as that sounds, it's also a scientific fact that light and sound create reality. So lean into that. And when you find yourself scared, look in the mirror. Because this Nine of Wands and this Fool are also incredibly reflective. Look in the mirror, look into your left eye, and remind yourself of who you are and how far you've come, and entertain the many ideas of just how far you can go. And neurologically, that does create a very nurturing connection, both in your mind and in your heart and in your inner world, but in the ways that you produce your outer world as well. The ways that you produce your outer world, honestly. The ways in which this reflection is no longer a polarity, or a contradiction, but a dichotomy and a unity, which is, again, what Venus and Mars and Capricorn ultimately need to learn before they exit Capricorn. This one's hard. Okay, we're gonna pull some numbers. Okay, let's feel things. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Okay, two things. Very exciting, but also in a way that can also make you really nauseous. Like anxiety and excitement are very similar, and you can be so excited that you're like, oh my god, I just laughed so hard I threw up. Conversely, you can be so anxious that you just throw up out of nowhere, or feel so constricted that you just throw up out of nowhere. And there's this feeling before that occurs, almost like you're like full of air, like your mouth is full. And so I very much felt that in a pleasurable way, like fulfilling. And then there was this sort of like snap out of it moment of like nausea. And that's very much the quick fluctuations between like, you know, our enthusiasm and our fear, and that back and forth that exists when we second guess and doubt and hesitate and all of those things, rather than trust your intention and your, not just your intellect, but your intuition, but your intention most of all, I think. I feel like your intention in this context, maybe even beyond intuition, because intention is like breathing life into it, and intuition is almost, can be an expectation, I think, with some people, where you almost get so caught up in your prediction that it changes the trajectory of the momentum. When you can be so assumptive, sometimes you get knocked on your ass, eh? 5, King, 3. 3 of clubs. Patience, mindfulness, again, that intention, which I think reiterates that point. The intention of anything that you do, which the heart, like the root of intention in a lot of the things that we do comes from a really positive place, but we can find ourselves sort of fogging that up with outside expectation that then becomes ours, and sort of becoming more impatient with ourselves, and sort of like adjusting the goal and adjusting the attention to fit what is more pleasurable or what is more expected by somebody other than yourself. And I think that's when we move too fast through it, and lose sight of your intention. When you slow down and you, as I'm looking at my plans, is a really good example. Rather than rush them through growth, especially if they're, you know, propagations or repotted or what have you, allow them their time to settle, and you sort of, with patience, with mindfulness, and with intention, assist in that growth. And it's not very hands-on, but it is things like, you know, remembering to water, singing to your plants, you know, being mindful about the light you use on your plants. But all of those things also apply here. We are basically plants. We just don't necessarily put our genitals in the air all the time. And so I think that's very much it. And that becomes less about the growth and more about the intention, and more about that that space in between the current state and the idealized growth point, which also gives a lot of room for fantasy and imagination and creativity, And I think that's something that we can offer ourselves as well. Similar to the way we can step back in time and go to our younger selves and sort of intervene in situations or what have you. We can ask questions of our future self if you were to take them out for coffee and ask them how they are. What is an answer that would make you happy and proud? And I shit you not, I'm willing to bet that you're so much more proud of yourself than you give yourself credit for, or than you allow yourself to be. And I think that practice kind of uplifts intention and also sort of supercharges it. So what is that, like 2 or 3 things you could do for the new moon? Talk to your future self, ask them what they love, ask them what they want, ask them what they ran toward. And you'll be surprised, actually, what you'll find out. There was a time I did this, actually, and spoke to a future version of myself and how they would have been if they ran toward a situation that I felt in my heart was not going to be ideally becoming, and that would have been a betrayal to myself. And sure as shit, the future version of me was also still very full of doubt about that. And it 100% clarified the whole situation for me. And it was like, wow, okay, sweet. I never want to be that. I never want to feel like that. Future me deserves to be absolutely sure and feel that in abundance, and feel that radiating. And that was ultimately what I wanted. But maybe I didn't know that before until I asked my future self in that scenario. And it was very literally just sitting down and like meditating with myself and visualizing another homie, like, again, like we went out for coffee. The King of Spades underneath this Nine of Wands is very much about clearing energy. It's not that we need to release or get rid of, but it is that it needs to find an outlet. That anger, that rage wants somewhere to go. It's also masking a lot of pain and a lot of fear and a lot of hurt. So the King of Spades is very much uncovering those things so that we can utilize them in a way that moves us forward. And, you know, in terms of radical abolition, as much as we are filled with rage, that's not what drives us to create conversation and community. That's not what drives us to, you know, reach out or to try to understand. That I think very literally would prevent you from even trying to educate yourself on you know, the language of the opposite or the enemy or the oppressor or whatever it is. And when you can temper those feelings and direct them properly, then you open up yourself to so much more possibility in being able to handle that situation, and see through it clearly. Like, and even if it, you know, wasn't the government or what have you, and it was just a frustrating situation with another person, you can't see clearly when all the molecules are vibrating. You can't see clearly when the inside of you is shaking. So what do we do with that? How do we clear it? How do we allow it to make space? Again, that like thrashing that I felt when we were first breathing, which isn't necessarily release, isn't necessarily clearing it as in getting rid of it, but it is acknowledging it. It is understanding and interpreting it, and tracing that back to what's underneath it all, which is very much going beyond the surface. This dude, he really does some hard work. And there's very much an alignment. I think his root chakra and like crown chakra are very much engaged. I think we don't have to think in terms of ooh, I don't think we have to think in terms of survival constantly, but it's hard. And that's not to say that we aren't living in terms of survival constantly. However, you can't see clearly when that's all that you see, and you don't see the abundance of nature or the blessings of the natural universe, and you limit its possibility in that way too. In a macro way. In a micro way, maybe your expectations are like shutting your partner down, and little do you know you're actually like shitting on their dreams. Or you know, your own anticipations, assumptions, expectations, or inability to see them trying is actually what's damaging a relationship or a friendship or what have you, more so than what you think of their behavior and what have you. I think this person also communicates what they're feeling really well. And the Nine of Wands, and okay, I'm going to show these comparatively. The Nine of Wands, this homie, I think in a unruly place when they're not inspired by it, they don't know how to communicate what it is exactly they're feeling. And even when you are inspired, sometimes there's still I mean, and I'm speaking very literally in creating, it's almost hard to, it can be really hard to translate what's up here onto page. I think the King of Swords is very much aware and very capable of doing shit like that and communicating that. The Five of Swords with this Knight of Pentacles is spelunking, it has to find that pentacle and remind itself of that pentacle. And maybe that's like going through your browser history, like going through your own like inner cache of all of the things that you offered to yourself, let alone offered to somebody else, and all of the things that you want to be offered that you are not offering yourself, because that is a huge blockage in your ability to receive it as well. And so this Five of Spades is very much putting in the intellect in the problem solving so that they can create more intention and intuition in the ways that they solve problems in the outside world. It's very much like in equal parts like a programming kind of metaphor. An algorithm learns more by the problems that it assesses. We are an algorithm and we have assessed so many problems. Have we forgotten how much data that we have and how much more capable because of that we are at solving other issues? At the end of the day, remind yourself this probably ain't the worst thing you've been through, and you are much stronger than you think. In whatever ways that you need that strength, you are much stronger than you think. And learn where you want it to go and where it wants to go, and whether or not those things align. Our rage, for instance, feels like it wants to go outward and break some shit, but underneath that is often a desperation for hope, for hopefulness. And that doesn't want to break shit. That wants to build shit. And that is an inspired move. Do you see the difference? All right. As the sun goes down, I got stuff to do. Happy new moon. Love ya. Party on. Aho. Ashe. Ash. Ash. Toneda. I'll see you again.